everyone. It's me, Kimberly, again. Just think, you may only have to see me for a few more days, or else you may see me all the way through November and maybe even for another 6 years after that. We just don't know right now. Anyway, this is another one, I think our second or third to the last one of this series of our virtual events for the primary season anyway. And so we're just going to take questions for about 45 minutes or so, and then we are going to switch over to a watch party, I believe, of the Iowa Public Television debate. So you can stick around for that. I think we're going to live stream it. I don't know. Are we going to live stream it through our campaign account on Facebook? I don't know. That's not my job.
Right.
Anyway, so people can stick around for that if they want to as well. Diana asks, there's answered questions. Okay, there's questions under answered, but they couldn't have been answered because I wasn't here. So I'm going to answer the answered questions as well. So it looks like for some reason the questions are flipping over to the answered section to my team. I don't know why that's happening, but anyway, I'll just look over there. So Diana asked how I thought the rally went. It was great. It was a really good turnout, like a huge turnout. I'm bad at counting people in crowds, but I'm thinking there had to at least be 1,000 people there, maybe 1,500. I don't know, a lot. They were all over by the police station downtown Des Moines, spilling over onto the bridges, that are near the police station, and was great. All the speakers were great. I was able to speak there. As I said when I was there, I'm not going to say no if somebody invites me to show up and speak out for racial justice. But I also shared that I felt really uncomfortable because, what does a white woman have to say, especially to our Black brothers and sisters about, what's not just been happening in the last few weeks, which is bad enough, but, it's such a horrific, big, weight, I guess, on our nation. The history of racism in this country and the history and then all the way up to now, like all of it. And I just thought, all I feel like I really can do is encourage other white people to realize you're going to feel uncomfortable when you join in trying to forward racial justice. And you're going to say the wrong thing and you're going to do the wrong thing, but just keep going. Like, you'll also do the right thing sometimes, and you'll also say the right thing a lot of times. And if you just keep showing up to support, our Black brothers and sisters, then start there, and I encourage people to do things like that maybe some people don't know. Like, you can join the NAACP, and you can join the Iowa Democratic Party Black Caucus as a white person, and just go to those meetings and sit there and listen, and learn and educate yourself about the history of racism in the United States and all of that. So anyway, I'm glad I was able to speak. Matthew asks how I'm feeling heading into the weekend. I'm not sure, Matthew. Not all the feelings. It's very strange. It's very strange to spend. I've never done this before. I've never run for office before. I really can't compare it to much of anything else that I've ever done. Some people compare running to office kind of to running a marathon, which I have done. And I've run 14 or so half marathons. But the full marathon is a whole different animal. And it really is, there's similarities in that, like mile 18, 19, you think I only have 5-6 miles to go, but it feels like you might as well just run a whole marathon at that point because you're so exhausted. So I don't know. It's been the best. I'm so glad I did it, no matter what happens, whether we win or don't. Obviously, I hope we do. We cannot afford internal polling, meaning we have not bought any polling, paid for polling to see how we're doing, which campaigns often do, I guess, at the federal level, but we can't afford that, so we didn't do it. And The only poll that we have that we at all is that Des Moines Register MediaCom poll, which was in early March, in which we came out on top for name recognition and for favorability. But, outside spending now is almost to $10 million. Outside groups spending to advertise candidate Greenfield's campaign, and to, make negative attacks on Admiral Franken's campaign. And unfortunately, there's a reason people buy ads, right? Because they work at least somewhat. So who knows? We just have no idea what's going to happen. But I'm very happy that this race did not go on without progressive ideals being represented, and that that Medicare for all was a huge part of this conversation in every one of the debates that we got to talk about that. I think every one, at least two of them, because it's really important to keep that conversation going until the day that we get healthcare justice for everybody, so everybody has it. Hi, I have a friend. Ooh, I have a friend visiting. Hi, how are you doing? This is Mr. Lovebug. I've been busy today, so he's needy. Okay, gonna lay down. Okay. Somebody asks, with my experience as an attorney, how can I use the Senate position to better our overcrowded prison system, which is paid for by taxpayers? And do I have any plans to address mental health versus costly and lengthy prison sentences for first-time nonviolent criminals, including sex crimes, when prison has been found ineffective? There's a lot to unpack in there. So in general terms, I will just say this, one thing you learn as a lawyer is the devil's in the details. And what I mean by that is, if I don't know all the facts of whatever I'm talking about, and I haven't read the legislation that we're talking about, then I can't say, with any authority what I would do, because it's not in front of me. I don't know what it says. That said, our prison system is desperately in need of major reforming. It kind of blows my mind that we have such horrific conditions for incarcerated people who are human beings. And I've said this many times that, most people treat their pets better than a lot of incarcerated persons are treated in prison. And as far as their conditions, prison conditions vary widely, and there are some in this country that have inadequate heat, inadequate, air conditioning, and these are in the South typically, some of the worst prisons, and have very poor conditions. I was talking to a voter today on the phone who said that her husband is in prison and cannot get eyeglasses. Like, there's like a 2-year waiting list. And when you leave jail and go to prison, she said, you can't take your eyeglasses with you. But then to get them issued to you from the prison system takes a couple of years, evidently, at least at the prison he is at. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous for somebody that needs eyeglasses to function, to not have them. And that's the kind of very basic thing that I'm talking about. We should not wonder why we have such a high recidivism rate and reoffending rate when we don't treat people as human beings in prison. And, losing your freedom and being incarcerated, being locked up in a building, that's supposed to be your punishment, right? It's not supposed to be on top of that, then you are treated subhumanly. That to me is incorrect. And it doesn't produce the results that I think most people would say they want, which is for people to get out, right? And make a better life for themselves and not reoffend. So that's, I think the best way as an attorney, I don't know that it's necessarily that I've been an attorney that makes a difference to that, only that I haven't done criminal defense work in a lot of years. I did a little bit of criminal defense work early in my career, but I have not for quite a while. But I do also enjoy looking into what other countries do. I always like to look for what other countries do. And some other countries, other developed nations, just like other developed nations do healthcare better than we do, some developed nations do prison a lot better than we do, meaning that the focus is a lot more on rehabilitation and on building the person up So when they get out, they have support systems and structure and education to make it right outside of prison, rather than what sometimes seems to me to be the focus on tearing people down in prison. And that's just seems counterproductive to me, really counterproductive. Denise. Denise saw me on the debates and became more interested in me. Well, thank you, Denise. Tell me more about your campaign. Tell me how you will help the broken legal system and prison system. Like I just mentioned, I think Denise, it's kind of one of those, once I get in there, we'll see. But I think maybe what I just said answered part of your question, that I would be advocating for really adjusting our whole attitude about our criminal justice system and our prison system, especially. For starters, there should not be any private prisons. Just like with healthcare, I don't think people should make profits on the backs of sick people, and I don't think people should make profits on the backs of incarcerated people. In other words, I don't think making profits on somebody's misery is what we should be doing. And not only that, but when the prisons go private, then you don't have nearly the ability to provide oversight. At least I don't think you do. And when you have public prisons, then you can have boards and you can have inspections and you can make sure that people are being treated properly, and all of that. And it's a difficult. I understand that it's a difficult political issue. By that I just mean a lot of politicians don't have the courage to stand up and really talk about it often, because there's literally thousands of issues that need our attention, right? We need to fix our public schools. We need to fight racism. We need to fix healthcare. We need to fix the prescription drug system. You could go on for days listing all the things that we need to improve. But fundamentally, we have to be putting humanity first and people first. And so one of the ways that we do that, I think, is by standing up for every single person, even including those who have done horrible things. They still are human beings, and if they're going to get out, which the vast majority will, right? There's by percentage, there's not a lot of lifers in there. Most of them are going to get out, and a lot of them are going to go back in if we don't fix things, right? If we don't somehow create a prison system that is actually, like I just mentioned, building people up instead of tearing people down. So it's about that, and it's about then taking a look at what our current legislation is. There's state prisons and federal prisons. So I am suspecting that I would have a lot more potentially to say about federal prisons than state, as a United States senator. But I remember when President Obama went into a prison. I believe it was a federal prison. And I think he was the only president who's ever done that, who actually, cared to go into a prison and look with his own eyes and see what's going on in there. And clearly I'm not saying that that was any kind of magical thing, but I'm just mentioning it because I really I would want to be and see myself as a senator, meaning if there's something going on, I want to go talk to people there and take a look at it myself. I don't just want to get reports. I want to go see what's going on. So I think that listening to people is the first step toward fixing things. Chit-chat. I think I've answered all those, I think. Oh, and you also said, Denise, tell me about the campaign. What do you want to know? Yeah, Denise, I agree with you that part of the problem is quotas and profits. Yep. And I think that's why those should not be profitable. That's not where you make profits, is in things like education, justice, healthcare. Those should be things that everybody has, right, as a human right, and not a for-profit system. Diana asks if I've given any thought to what committees I would be best to serve Iowans on. Well, yes, I actually have given thought to that. And Diana, you may know better than I do, like exactly how you get chosen. Like, I'm sure you can ask to be on certain committees, but I don't know how much, how exactly people are chosen. I'm sure you just request maybe which ones, or do they just put you? I don't know. Anyway, but agriculture is certainly incredibly important to our state, and so that seems like kind of a must. I think is being on the agriculture committee. Boy, we need to do more to help our farmers in our rural communities. The last few years with the trade wars have been disastrous for them. They were already hanging on by their fingernails, and now they're really up a creek. So we need to pay them for environmental services. Iowa agriculture can certainly be a kind of a leader in addressing the climate crisis through changing the way that we do agriculture in the state. But farmers have got to have help, and they've got to have supports. So instead of subsidizing wealthy corporations, I think what we should be doing is providing incentives and subsidies to small and medium farmers so that they can make those transitions to sustainable and regenerative agriculture if they want to, because what's happening now, especially if we're not enforcing our antitrust laws, is that these farmers really, everything is controlled almost by somebody else. The cost of their inputs, the amount they get for their commodities on the backside, their outputs, and that is leaving them without much profit, if any. And farming should not be a nonprofit enterprise. So agriculture, Diana, and then I don't know. Judiciary is interesting to me because I've been an attorney for so long, and I think I know what makes a good judge, having appeared in front of dozens of them in my career. So that might be one. And, besides, then we can try to make up for the damage that Grassley has done to our nation by putting a different Iowan on the Judiciary Committee. Let's see. Jody asked how I feel about term limits. Yes, I think we very much need them. But I know some people, are for one term, like you serve one term and then you're gone. I think you do need some experience, and that experience is useful. But I also am not down with, 30, 40, 50, whatever, 50 years in the Senate or in Congress. I think probably a couple terms in the Senate and the equivalent years in the House would be good, but I do think that term limits are a good idea. But we need to do that along with campaign finance reform in a major way and completely redo the way we do elections, because right now, those with the most money have the most influence in our elections, period. And as long as that's still happening, nothing's going to change. So that really, and yes, it's chicken and egg. How do you get the people elected who are willing to make those big changes when those aren't the candidates that are being backed by big corporate dollars? I don't know. But we might have a chance to at least get one more person in here shortly. We'll see. We'll see on Tuesday, I guess. Marlis Evans asks, can you help us keep our healthcare and keep our economy good with jobs and not let prices go up for our cost of living? So Marlis, as far as healthcare goes, I mean, certainly we need to keep, for the short term, we need to keep the Affordable Care Act in place, because that keeps us able to keep our kids on our insurance till they're 26, right? And it got rid of that pre-existing condition nonsense that used to exist, where insurance companies used to be able to just kick you off or not insure you if you had a pre-existing condition, not insure you for that condition. And it also got rid of the lifetime and annual caps. So it used to be in the older days that if you hit so much money in insurance claims, they just got turned off, like they wouldn't pay anymore. So if you had a serious injury or illness, that racked up a lot of bills, that at some point they just wouldn't pay. And so all those three things were changed by the Affordable Care Act, and that's fantastic. The problem, though, is that we have something like 87 million Americans. Well, that was before COVID-19, actually, that statistic. 87 million Americans underinsured or not insured at all. And then who knows how many of us, most of us, have plans that are not really affordable to begin with, even the premiums. And then if you add in the cost of the deductibles and the copays and everything else that we have to pay out of pocket, they're just not affordable. Our medical insurance system in this country is breaking people financially. Even people in middle income, right? You might be middle income, but by the time you pay your health insurance premium and copay and deductible for everyone in your family, if you have a 3 or 4 person family, and then let's say you have kids that have some amount of childcare, so you're paying for childcare, and then oh, good luck, and then try to save for college, and then oh, good luck trying to save anything for retirement. Like just those 4 things alone, just the childcare and the medical, or just the medical, if you have lower income, is going to break you. You will never get ahead. And I believe that in a wealthy and moral nation, healthcare should be a human right, and that you should have it just because you are here in this country. And so, you know, we have to work toward that. And I hope that we will stop electing people who disagree with that. I hope we will stop electing people who think that healthcare is a privilege, basically. And they will not say that, of course. They'll say, oh, it's a right. Well, it's a right only if you can afford it. And that's not the kind of human right I'm talking about. To me, that's not a human right. So if you haven't seen it, Marlis, on our website and also on our campaign Facebook page under videos, you can look for the forum. There's 2 of them that would be probably interesting for you if you're interested in healthcare discussions. One, I think, is just called Healthcare with Michael Lighty. And the other one is, I forget what we called it, Healthcare Abroad or something like that. It's about, we had guests on our video who are American, who are living in foreign countries. So we have people with an American experience of medical care and insurance, and these people are now living in Canada. One was living in France. One had lived in the UK. And then we had a gentleman from Germany on as well, who was German. And so these Americans were able to talk exactly about the differences between the American system and, say, the Canadian system. And in this one case, this woman, American, the American living in Canada, was saying, it just still blows my mind that, I've had 2 children in Canada. I literally went and had them and left the hospital with them and never got a bill. My kids have had stitches and taken to the ER and that kind of thing. And when my friends in the States have to do that with their kids, they're worried about, they've just incurred this big bill, right? Or big deductible payment. And I go and get my child's care at the ER when they fall and need stitches, and I go home and that's it. I never get a bill for anything. And to not have that weight of the cost of medical care on our shoulders every day, I quite literally cannot imagine how freeing that's going to feel. I hope I live to see it. The day when Americans are no longer walking around with the weight of, oh my God, what if something happens to me or my child or my parents, and they have a huge amount of medical debt, right? And that's even if you can get care. forget the debt. Can you even afford the insurance, right? How will I help people who are over 65 with finances and medical services? Well, Marlis, first of all, one thing is that I believe that we need to increase Social Security payments. A lot of people are only getting around $1,200 to $1,500 a month. And the way that we do medical care in this country and prescriptions, you're still having to buy Medicare for All bill that is out there would do away with that. So the Medicare for All bill isn't just taking Medicare and applying it to everyone. The Medicare for All is something different and better. And there's not going to be any supplemental plan to buy or buy your prescription coverage and the donut hole and it won't cover this and that. That will all be over. Just one problem though, is that those corporate executives and those shareholders for those healthcare companies and those drug companies don't want it. They don't want it because they don't want to give up billions of dollars in profit. And that all goes back to getting corporate money out of politics. So it's all related. It's all related. What happens to the healthcare employees if we do away with private insurance? Iowa has a lot of workers in that industry. Yeah. Again, Marlis, I highly recommend you go watch that forum that we did with Michael Lighty. Michael Lighty is one of the people that actually wrote the Medicare for All bill. So he knows it like the back of his hand. Like there is nobody who knows that bill better than him, well, except for the other people who helped write it. And we talked about this exact question. in that healthcare forum. And I won't do the long version because you can go watch the forum, but basically there is it's built into the Medicare for All bill that there's a lengthy period of retraining, paid training to train either into a different field if somebody wants to, or if people are near retirement, they can be paid up until their actual official retirement date if they want to go ahead and retire, a couple years earlier, whatever the number of years is. And it's interesting about healthcare employees. Something that I don't hear people talk about really hardly ever. I've only ever heard me talk about this, and that is the emotional toll that the emotional toll on healthcare workers. I'm talking about the frontline workers who are the ones taking the calls from people like you and me, who maybe have been denied for a treatment or denied for a certain prescription drug for us or our loved one, or denied a surgery, because that's the model. Insurance companies make their money by taking our premiums and denying as many claims as they can deny, right? As they can reasonably deny. And that's where you get the profits. So the toll on the workers, I can't imagine that, of sitting there all day, every day, and having people call in and be mad at you and yell at you and cry and scream because their child needs XYZ prescription and the insurance company you work for will not pay for it, right? Things like that. There's a supporter of our campaign who was an admittance clerk at an emergency room. And one of the reasons she's such a strong supporter of Medicare for All is because the first thing that you need to do when you come into an emergency room is not get care like in Canada. No, it's figure out how you're going to pay for it and show them your insurance card. And then, if you're in the wrong hospital and you don't have insurance, then they're going to ship you, a few miles down the road to the county hospital or something. Cause they don't want you to end up owing a big bill that you can't pay to them. And there's a big toll taken on healthcare workers that are those frontline workers who are having to literally tell people that are sick, I'm sorry, you're going to have to, go across town because this hospital won't take you with that kind of insurance or whatever it is. That just doesn't happen under a Medicare for All system. So Marlis, in regards to Social Security, we need to increase the amount of the payment, and we can afford to do that if we do something called scrapping the cap. What that means is right now that if you make up to a certain income level, after a certain top income level, you don't pay anything else into Social Security, you stop paying. But scrapping the cap would eliminate that cap so that people would pay a certain percentage towards Social Security on all of their income. So that would fund it. That would take care of funding the increase. Carrie wants to know if we're having a virtual victory party Tuesday night. We're having a party or a watch party, or I don't know what we're calling it. We'll let everybody know. Michael, state colleges and universities are not only engines of the economy, startup incubators and research centers that contribute to the world's knowledge, but many are also academic medical centers that are on the front lines of the war against the coronavirus. Yep. During this time of pandemic, these critical institutions of higher education are all suffering from massive revenue losses at the same time they are experiencing decreased state funding. If elected, how do you intend to save state colleges and universities nationally and those in Iowa specifically? Yeah, well, I am a proud product of a public university and a private. I went to law school at a private school, but I went to my undergrad at a public university. They're critically important. I mean, sounds like I'm not telling you, you already know how critically important they are. But I do too. And so I would be standing up and fighting to get that whatever funding they need to be shored up. If there's federal funding that needs to happen, I would be standing up and fighting for that. Yeah, everything you said is 100% true and so important. And as you well know, I'm sure, Michael, our governor has done the opposite of investing in our public, colleges and universities here in Iowa. there's just been such, not only just the funding, but that whole discussion about, oh, I can't remember the details of it right now. My brain's fried, but there was some issue in the last few years, I think, about tenure and not granting tenure, and just things that are just going to further erode our ability to attract top-notch professors to the universities in Iowa. I can't remember the details. You probably know them, Michael. Sounds like you're in the know about everything going on in our public colleges and universities, but that's just nonsense. And obviously some of that's state level, and I would have no say in that, no power in that. But if there's things I can do on a federal level, I would definitely be standing up and fighting for those. They're critically important. Denise asked how I feel about Iowa's oh, whoops. Oh, here we go. The question went whoop, where I couldn't see it. About Iowa's aquifer being depleted by I'm not quite sure what the question is. And then it says, I believe ethanol might be better for the air, but I don't believe it will be okay for future generations if we cause collapse sinkholes in the earth. I'm not 100% sure what question you're asking, but I can generally say that, I'm for ultimately switching our energy, away entirely from fossil fuels. And that also will call for retraining, for lengthy training periods, paid training, not training that people would have to pay for themselves, for people that would be impacted by switching over to, non-fossil fuel based energy. Jeremiah asks, what will my goal for year one be, assuming we don't have a major crisis? Unfortunately, Jeremiah, I don't think that's a good assumption to make. I think we probably will. For one thing, unfortunately, I still think that we are going to still be dealing with COVID-19. On what level, to what extent, I don't know. But so far, we're not doing what we need to do to really stamp this thing down, meaning testing, and I mean millions of people tested so that we know who's infected for sure, and we can successfully quarantine those people until they're no longer able to transmit the virus to others. There's been some studies that have indicated that up to 50% of people infected with COVID-19 show zero symptoms and feel perfectly fine, yet they can be out infecting others if they're out and about. So it's critically important that we be testing everybody. And our current president just doesn't seem to have any interest in ramping up, using the Defense Production Act to ramp up, production of tests so that we have enough for everybody, and can truly safely have a more open, open lives like we used to, and be able to kind of go pretty much anywhere and do pretty much anything without wearing masks and hand sanitizing like crazy and all of that stuff. And social distancing. If for some strange reason that suddenly vanishes, or they find a very effective vaccine in the very, very next 6 months or so that in 2021 we're still not dealing with COVID-19 on this level. It would obviously depend on exactly what's going on at the time. You don't get to, or at least I don't think you get to, or you shouldn't just choose one thing as a US Senator. I understand the importance of focus, but like spinning at once. I would definitely want to introduce legislation for universal childcare. I'm also hopeful that that would be something that perhaps even non-Democrats would agree to. I know that's wishful thinking maybe, but we're the only nation without some kind of universal childcare program, and that needs to change. We also don't have any paid maternity leave nationally like other countries do. I've had a client recently, knew of a client who had to go back to work as a waitress like a week after she gave birth because she's lower income and they don't have paid maternity leave or any paid sick leave at her work. It was either go back to work immediately or not be able to pay her rent. So that needs to stop. In a wealthy, moral nation, that's just absolutely ridiculous. So it could be probably the American Child Care Act, but we also need to really get working on healthcare and get a universal single payer system done. We need to get it over the line. It's been too long. And, even When Senator Harkin retired, you can Google this probably and find it. I don't remember if it was an op-ed or if it was an article where somebody quoted him. But as he was kind of on his way out the door in 2014, he said something, and I'm paraphrasing, like the ACA was a mistake. He voted for it, and we all hoped it would be great, right? We all hoped it would be great and it would solve a lot of problems. And we now know it didn't. It solved some problems, like I mentioned earlier, but it didn't solve the affordability of healthcare, of medical insurance, or the actual true accessibility. Because and then we had all these exchanges, and then people were pulling out of them because they were ending up with only the riskiest people with the highest medical costs. And that's exactly what will happen under a public option, is that it won't be sustainable because it's only going to end up taking the highest risk people into the public option, and it won't be sustainable, just like what happened with the ACA. So even Tom Harkin said, kind of on his way out, you know what? I think he said something like, we should have either done a public option, or we should have done a universal single payer healthcare system. So he even realized even then that we should have done something different. And it's a lot of people don't realize that it wasn't just Republicans that tanked our chance back then to get a universal single payer system. It was some Democrats too. And so, and that's sad, and that's too bad. But everyone's different. Not all Republicans are exactly the same. I know we all think they are, and not all Democrats are exactly the same. So know who you're voting for. That's all I could say. What is my opinion about legalizing cannabis? Yeah, that's from Victor. Yeah, well, so medical legalization for medical use should be done federally yesterday. Like it's absurd that that's not available everywhere. Obviously, some states have already done that, but we just should do it federally and stop dinking around with it. As far as recreational, I read the other day that something like 60% of all Americans currently already live where it is legal recreationally. And so, less than half the country lives in a place where it is not recreationally legal yet. So it's happening. I mean, it's going to happen. It could continue to happen on a state by state basis. But what I would rather see, if we're going to continue that trend, and I don't see why we wouldn't, toward legalization recreationally, is that since the Black community especially has been hit so hard by it being illegal for so long, and there are thousands of Black and brown people incarcerated as a result of those laws, I would really like to be thoughtful about the way that we roll out, if we ever roll out a federal legalization, to make sure that we are including in these new business opportunities, not just wealthy, probably mostly white people, but not just wealthy people who have the startup capital to be able to start a cannabis business. So I would like us to be more thoughtful about that, so that we don't just turn that into only a business opportunity for already wealthy people. Like, I don't think we need more of the rich get richer kinds of businesses. We need to start trying to include more people of different financial means in business opportunities like that. From Kevin Miller, do I support getting rid of cash bonds? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And that's one way. Another thing, Kevin, is that, we need to start being really more highly aware that the county attorneys, they call them DAs in other states, district attorneys. Here we call them county attorneys in Iowa. They have a lot of say. They have a lot of say in how criminal justice is handled within their own offices. What does somebody get charged with? What do they not get charged with? What charges get dismissed? What kind of sentence is the county attorney requesting? Are they going to prosecute? How are they going to prosecute lesser crimes, kind of, for lack of a better word, crimes of poverty, right? How are they going to, or are they going to prosecute those? To what extent? There's so many things that are handled by the county attorney. And I think that all over the nation, people are becoming more and more aware of that, and they're starting to be more and more progressive DAs and county attorneys being elected. And those are almost always, I think always, I know they are in Iowa, but I don't know about other states for sure, but I think those are always elected positions. So I think that's one of our next frontiers of criminal justice reform, is to elect more progressive people to the job of DA or county attorney, because that will change things for the better. Denise asks, will senators have a separate medical care plan as they do now for life? I have no idea, Denise. I don't know. I mean, we didn't talk about that, but I would think no. Like I can't think of any reason why that would be. I mean, if everyone's going to have high quality medical insurance and care available to them through Medicare for All, I would see no reason why there should be a separate plan. That would seem silly. But we didn't talk about that specific question in that healthcare forum, so that's just why I'm a little hesitant to say for sure. But I can't imagine that they would have drafted that with an exception for federal representatives. That seems silly anyway. So I hope not. Victor Zavala asks, what are my thoughts on party loyalty? Do I agree with representatives that blindly support party decisions, even if that means abandoning your core values? Yeah, no. So we have to put people over everything. People over profits, people over party, people over, I don't know, whatever else you want to say. Like, my guiding light is always, how is this going to affect people? How is this going to, in this case, how's this going to affect Iowans? And also, how's this going to affect the majority of Iowans? Like, who is this going to affect the most? How is it going to affect them? And I think you try to find out those questions by asking them, reaching out and asking whatever constituencies it is that's going to be effective. For instance, if I'm faced with voting on something about agriculture, I'm going to be reaching out to the Farmers Union and Practical Farmers of Iowa and the Center for Rural Affairs and whatever organizations, and then just regular people that may contact my office, right? And listen to them and talk to them, and then also talk to experts about the financial piece of any particular piece of legislation and how that's all going to shake out. There's a lot of spinning plates in a piece of legislation, and you have to kind of look at all of them. So Victor, no, I don't agree with blindly supporting my party. I mean, to me, the party isn't something to blindly support. Like, the reason I'm a Democrat is because I believe that fundamentally what Democrats say they're about is what I'm saying: putting people over profits, putting people first, putting humanity first, putting civil rights first, putting human rights first. And so that's good. And labeling yourself a Democrat, stamping your forehead with Democrat, gives you like a group of people to associate with that may generally tend to agree with those things. But I don't think that a party is something to be blindly loyal to. Like, if that contradicts doing what's best for the majority of Iowans, then I'm not going to be down for it. So William Henderson asks if I think we should have public banks. That's a very interesting question, William. Now, I don't know, because I don't like to answer things that I'm ignorant about, and I'm pretty ignorant about what it mean. But I will say this. I heard during the presidential campaign, a couple of presidential candidates, I think, talking about creating like a bank basically in the post office, which would then basically be a public bank. So in creating banking services within the post office, which I think is a fantastic idea, because I think it would help keep the post office going, right? And bring more money into them. And it would be a great service for people that otherwise might not have access to banking services. So I don't know if that's exactly what you were trying to ask, but I think that creating a banking facet to the post office, to the USPS, would be a great idea. Livable wages are needed. How can we make that happen? Yeah, amen. Well, for starters, we need to raise the minimum wage straight up, like $7.25 an hour is absolutely pathetic. I always, as I mentioned earlier, I always like to know, well, what are other developed nations doing? What's Canada doing? What's France doing? What's Germany doing? And I looked around and researched this question last fall, I think it was. And at that time, the next lowest minimum wage I could find across all those nations was in Canada. And it was not everywhere in Canada. It was only in like a specific province or a specific area. And even then it was only like for specific jobs, I think. And I don't remember the details, but it was $10.25 or 50 cents an hour, 10 something. And ours is 7.25. So the next, and most of the minimum wages around the world were more like somewhere between like $15 to $22 an hour. I think Denmark, if you adjusted it to dollars, would be about $22 an hour. So yes, people working at fast food restaurants in Denmark, for instance, make 22, I think it is $20 or $22 an hour. And it's very interesting to me that every time those surveys come out about happy, like which nations are happiest, the United States is always near the bottom of developed nations, and Denmark is always at the top. And it could be that people there can do any job and make a living and not feel like they are struggling in abject poverty constantly, because that is a huge weight off your shoulders as a human being. There was a study, I think, in the Seattle area when Seattle raised its minimum wage to $15 an hour. The suicide rate went down. So we need to listen to that. We need to pay attention to that. It's not just about the dollars and cents. It's also about like your mental health and how you feel and your emotional state and all of that when you're able to earn more money. Oh, we have 3 minutes. No, we don't have any minutes. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate it. And if you have not yet gone through your cell phone, and looked for 10 friends that you can call up or text and tell them why you're supporting this campaign and ask them to do the same, or at least ask them to consider it. We don't want to be, too bossy. You don't want to be like me, but but anyway, please do that over the weekend. If you know anybody that you think may not have voted yet, that's called relational organizing in politics, and it works for the same reason that we all want to go to Amazon and read the reviews, right, before we buy something, or at least I do, because we want to know what other people have to say. And so your support and voicing your support on your Facebook page or on if you have Twitter, or just calling your friends and talking to them or texting them, it's really effective and really important to support the campaign. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support. I will keep working to deserve it. And yeah, and we'll probably see you guys Tuesday sometime. And now the IPTV debate will be, I feel like a newscaster. I feel like I live in this box on my computer now. The IPTV debate will be streamed live on our Facebook and Twitter feeds. So head over to facebook.com/Kimberly for Iowa, or Twitter @Kimberly for Iowa. And we can go watch the debates together, but separately at a safe social distance. Thanks, you guys. Great to have you all here. Thank you all for the support. I appreciate it. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.